Very much. We welcome this opportunity, and I think I speak on behalf of my brothers here. This forum has become a marketplace for attracting investment to our great continent. And obviously, as we sit here, we will talk about our own countries. But more broadly, we want to have a broader continental look because Africa's time has come for investments, and we want serious investors who will look at the whole continent and particularize it and look at various countries for investment opportunities. And we've got great ones. For South Africa, we've got very attractive investment opportunities in a number of sectors. And right now, we're focusing on areas like infrastructure, on energy, on the manufacturing base that we have in our country, and seeking to industrialize more and more in areas like automotive, agro-processing, and energy implements. So those are areas that we're focusing on that we believe can attract a whole lot of investments, and they do mutate into a number of other subsectors. We believe that we are the tourism capital of our continent. When God created Africa, he spent quite a lot of time on South Africa to make South Africa as attractive as it is. When you come in right from the bottom, you see Table Mountain, and once you do so, even as you want to travel through the whole continent, which you must, you'll find that you want to spend a little bit more time in South Africa.
I think building on what President Ramaphosa has just mentioned, when you look at Africa as a whole, there is a lot of progress, a lot of activities taking place that are really raising Africa to a much higher level. I want to simply say, I have always thought it was Africa's time. I think we Africans have let ourselves down, and we are now, I think, realizing that it has always been our time, and we need to seize every opportunity and be where we should be by now. So first of all, I also want to thank President Ramaphosa, the President of South Africa, and the government and the private sector for providing a very good environment for us to be here to discuss these issues, and thank the President of the African Development Bank that has put all this together with the South African leadership. For Rwanda, particularly, we have concentrated on creating a conducive business environment for people to invest, to do business in Rwanda, with the environment of predictable governance systems and security, and so far, so good. In a region of this African community that is probably the fastest growing region on our continent, and Rwanda being part of that and benefiting from that as well. And Rwanda being the second in the ranking in Africa for the ease of doing business. The World Bank ranking puts Rwanda number 2. I think we have held that position for quite some time. It's high time we became number 1, so we are working So we continue to do that. So we really create that environment for people to come and invest, and it's in the area. 3 things I would want to mention, but there are probably 15. I'll just be very brief. We have created a number of things. One, we have agri-business hub we have created between 15 and 20,000 hectares that we are trying to put under irrigation and partner with the private sector for agribusiness and exports around that. That one we expect to have a public-private partnership. Second, we have also created Kigali Innovation City, where technology companies and higher institutions of learning come together with financial services to allow the startup companies to develop and grow and So we expect private capital to come in and grow that. The last one, last but not least, of the three is the Kigali Innovation Fund, which we have created. And with the support of the African Development Bank, we have already put in money, and the government is putting money. We want private people to come and invest as well to help these startups that are growing. So you're most welcome. I reserved the beauty part
This forum,
for
I was saying last year, I found it possible to renew the invitation. I'm grateful to him, and equally grateful, of course, to the world champion, the rugby world champion, Cyril, and President Cyril Ramaphosa for the warmth and the hospitality that we always get when we come here. Very grateful for that. I think that I have a very big responsibility. I'm the sole West African here, so I have also to bat for West Africa a little bit. We have Southern Africa. But the Ghanaian perspective, I think two things. First of all, I want very much to endorse what President Ramaphosa said, the need for us to have a continental framework in the way in which we're talking about economies in West Africa, in Africa. The African Continental Free Trade Area is a major step forward for us, and we have found the overwhelming majority, I think, press unanimity on the continent in adhering to its term. Ghana has been privileged to be chosen as the host of its secretariat, and all the initiatives are onward going to make sure that by the target date, the free trade area becomes a reality. And when it does so, it changes so many of the dynamics of the economics of our situation. So I think it's extremely important when we're having this kind of meeting that we have very much this immediate future in mind when our economies hopefully are going to be locked into a common market with all the commonalities that involves for the development of Africa. The specific Ghanaian context. What we've been doing since I came into office nearly 3 years ago is to strengthen the macroeconomy of our country. We inherited a situation, a large fiscal deficit that has been turned around now, considerable imbalances in the way in which our economy was being run, and that has also been turned around. A 15-16% rate of inflation is today at 7%, the lowest in 2 decades in the management of our national economy. And these are the building blocks for us. The macroeconomy, we think, is extremely important that we maintain discipline in the way in which we manage our public finances. And that has been our major objective. And so far, so good. We're realizing it. We're resisting the temptation in an election year which is about to go to turn on the tap. Hoping that the work we have done will take us through without having to do that. But so that's one very important background to the development of the Ghana. And the rest of it, and the consequences of it, of course, has been that in these 3 years, we've had one of the fastest growing economies, not just on the continent, but in the world, 8%, 7%. This year, we're looking at a 7.6% growth. And it's been consistent over these last 3 years. So you have an expanding economy that, of course, presents opportunities, especially in 3 key areas. Our infrastructure. It's a common problem across the continent, but it's one which we're paying a great deal of attention to, the development of our road, our rails, and our airport infrastructure in the country. In fact, last year here, an important initiative that we launched last year, which is bearing fruit, is the Accra SkyTrain project, in which South African investors are taking a very keen interest. And we're hoping that we will be able to advance the whole concept even more strongly this year. So we have that. We have also the transformation of our agriculture. It doesn't make sense that on this continent we keep still being a net importer of food when we have everything that is there to be able to grow food for ourselves. Our land, we have the greatest proportion of the arable lands of the world are in Africa. Ghana has a very high proportion of that. We have waters that are running through our system and capable of being the fountain of irrigation. So we're also paying a great deal of attention to the modernization of our agriculture. We have a program which we've called Planting for Food and Jobs. That is proving to be, and I want to be modest in saying so, but it's proving to be a spectacular success in Ghana. First of all, in the way in which it's addressing foodstuffs. We're now, for the first time in over a decade, exporting foodstuffs to our neighbors. Generally, there's a big thrust of the development of our economy, and I'm very, very keen in developing private sector interests. Because as you know, Ghanaian agriculture is largely smallholder agriculture. But then there is also the opportunity for large commercial agriculture to coexist side by side with the smallholder of the farmers. We're looking for investments in that area. And the third is we've established a Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund. And we are looking for money from outside also to invest in the fund. It becomes a major leverage for us for attracting monies to deal with our infrastructure. So we have a broad range. Our country, as you know, the country that used to be known as the Gold Coast, we have a lot of important minerals in our country, and we're looking to see how we can bring value to those imports, not to those resources, not just the export of them in their raw form, but enhancing their take in the value chain. I speak about gold, I'm speaking about manganese, I'm speaking of considerable bauxite resources, iron ore resources, lithium, which is now coming into play as a major natural resource. All of these are in abundance in Ghana, and we're now trying to forge the policies that will make it possible for these also to be the subject of investment. I, like the president of Rwanda, will leave out the beauty and the warmth of the Ghanaian people in my presentation.
The issues we have to deal with in Africa in order for us to attract investments, have business environment attractive, and therefore grow and develop and be where our countries want to be. There are these issues of governance that we know have to be considered and, in fact, invested in as well, at least in terms of effort that such happens in our countries. Then issues of stability, whether it is political or other issues that affect our stability. When you have conflicts, you have security issues we have seen. So there is nothing new that we don't know we have to deal with. I think all of us know what issues we have to deal with. The main difference will come when in one place or another they are actually doing what they know they ought to do. It's not just knowing what you ought to do or what you are even capable of doing, but it's another, in actual fact, doing it. So when we have seen across Africa progress happening and there are many positive things happening in every country of our continent. So they are not happening by miracle or anything. It's just because people are getting to doing what they have to do and have known they have to do for a long time. So the advice, therefore, is simple. Let's do what we know we ought to do. Let's involve our women. We see more numbers of women becoming CEOs because there are many who are capable, so we should not leave our women behind. That's what we have tried to address. We know we have to have accountable, transparent systems of government, and we have to make sure we do that. We have to create rule of law in our environment for people to expect certain things to happen, and that's what happens in any country. So that is the main advice. I cannot give advice of things that I think that anyone doesn't know in this room. Everyone knows what we are talking about.
The issue that has been raised falls in the category of the whole global challenge that many countries are facing, which is the issue of migration, how people move from one country to another, and some move because of economic conditions and political conditions and all that. And South Africa has always welcomed people from many other parts of the world. And in fact, right now we are one of the big recipients of people who have migrated to our country, fleeing their various countries for a number of reasons, and our neighbors who have gone through challenges. We've seen them, there are people coming into South Africa, and in the main they have settled here. We're very different from a number of other countries in that we decided not to set up what you would call reception centers where people will be kept in camps. We consciously decided that we want people who come to our country to be integrated into the South African society and be part of it, to be able also to make a living and to be part of the broader South African society. And some have criticized us for that and said you should have set up camps, but we've resisted doing that. But as we all know, when a country goes through difficult economic conditions itself, citizens of the country have a sense of propriety. They have a sense of self-interest, and they want to protect their own self-interest. It happens all over the world. And I characterize it as a fault line. Migration issues become a fault line in the life of any country, and sometimes reaction is sparked off by what you would call nonsensical incidents, whether somebody greeted another one in a different language or whether they couldn't answer in a different language, and it just sparks off. Inherently, South Africans are not xenophobic. The government of South Africa is irrevocably committed against xenophobia. We abhor it. We've got policies that are aimed at diluting it and taking action against it. And attacks on people from other countries are seen as a criminal act. In the recent past, of course, the unfortunate thing is that a number of people died, and many of them were South Africans who got caught up in the whole fracas that happened in a number of areas. And then when things like this happen, the criminal element kicks in, and people start seeing opportunities to act in a very incorrect way. Now, the problem that often happens with all this is that fake news becomes the order of the day. And in our situation, much of what happened was then fueled by fake news. And some of it happened in such a very ugly and gross way, where people were seen, there was pictures that were sent around, people jumping out of buildings that were burning. And they said, this is what is happening in South Africa. And it wasn't. It was people burning, jumping out of a building which was accidentally on fire in another country. And they transposed it and said, this is what is happening in South Africa, which then fueled the reaction of people in other countries, in Nigeria, for instance. And at the time as it happened, I was in close contact with President Buhari. And the security forces in Nigeria took a firm stance to help and defend South Africans who were there and their businesses. And similarly, we then took action here. More than 200 people were arrested because we also needed to demonstrate our firmness in taking action against those who were acting against people from other countries. And things have settled down, and I was very pleased that President Buhari did not cancel his state visit to South Africa in the wake of what happened. He still came, we sat down and discussed it in a very pleasant manner, friendly manner, and we decided that we are going to set up an early warning mechanism that will give us early indications of anything that could go wrong. But in addition to that, I then sent a number of envoys to various countries. They went to see President Kagame, President Akufo, Nana Akufo Addo in Ghana, and they're also going to go now in a few days to Mozambique. They're still going around. Just to explain exactly what has happened, but more than that, without taking too much time, we decided that we are going to set up a fact-finding team, which consists of former President Chissano of Mozambique and former President of Tanzania, Kikwete. They will work with a number of other local South Africans to get to the bottom of this, because we want to prevent further incidents of all this. Clearly, as a nation, we've got to take steps to ensure that South Africans have a greater appreciation of people from other countries, that we are not an island, And being the country that we are, we were also supported in our struggle by other countries on the continent who welcomed us with open arms. And as South Africans, we need to have that level of acceptance, level of embrace to other people. So we are irrevocably committed to taking action against xenophobic attacks against others, but we would also say we want to work with the continent. We want to work with the whole world, and indeed we're also working with the UN Commission on Refugees, and they have applauded the policies that we have embraced when it comes to treating refugees. So we want to say once again, South Africa is home to all. We want people to feel comfortable and safe in being in South Africa. And of course, there's got to be processes that have to deal with being regularized to be in South Africa, being permitted to have the necessary permits and all that, which happens in any other country. But South Africa, one, is not xenophobic. Two, South Africa is open to other people from other countries. And we want people to have a sense that this too is their home away from home.
The new citizen, the new Ghanaian citizen, for the question. And I'm thinking that you're part of those who are granting citizenship for the year of return. There's a whole big ceremony that I'm due to superintend when I get back home, where so many of our kith and kin from the Americas and the Caribbean are coming to be citizens of Ghana. So you're very welcome, and thank you for the question. I think that the question is a sort of a microcosm of the challenge that we're facing on the continent. And why do I say so? Between Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire, we're responsible for 65% of the world's output of cocoa. The cocoa industry, chocolate and all the related parts, is a $100 billion plus United States dollar industry, well, the global industry, a value chain that produces some $100 billion plus. Out of that, the farmers, whose hard work and toil is responsible for the cocoa, the 65%, get 6 billion plus maximum for their effort. You look at those facts and you know that there's something seriously wrong with that arithmetic. So when I came into office, I began to speak about it. And very fortunately for me and for our two countries, the Ivorian leader, Alassane Ouattara, had the same point of view as myself. We found that we had a joint mutual assessment of what was the reality and the need for us to do something about the reality. I see that is the most important aspect of political office, the opportunity it gives to you to address fundamental issues of confronting your people. So as a result of talks in Abidjan and in Accra, we came to a mutual understanding of what we needed to do, which was to fuse the marketing, the production and marketing policies of our two countries. The Cocoa Marketing Cocoa Board is the main instrument, state instrument for the development of the cocoa, and they have a Conseil de Cacao Café in Côte d'Ivoire, which plays an equivalent role there. So it was a question of bringing the two groups together to forge a common policy, and they have done so, insisting that in future we would enter the market at a certain basic floor price and hold that price, and then out of it find the opportunity to increase the earnings of our farmers. So that floor price has been stated. We've gone into the market on that basis. We now have the opportunity to pay our farmers a $400, if you like, bonus, which we call the living income differential per ton, and enhancing the incomes of our cocoa farmers so that they get more out of this value, this $100 billion industry that they've been given before. And we also found tremendous support from the African Development Bank, which is indicated and as part of the agreements that we're going to sign here, that they are prepared to support us enhancing our infrastructure in the cocoa industry. Being able to have a greater capacity for warehousing, being able to do more processing in our country of the raw material, and therefore being able to participate at the higher and higher level of the value chain in the cocoa industry. And the end result of all of this is going to be a considerable enhancement of the incomes of our cocoa farmers. Unfortunately, I think that the more progressive elements of the world industry have seen the value of the policy. Mars, the United States company, which is one of the biggest players in the industry, has come out openly to support the policy that the Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire have evolved together, to saying that it is the way to ensure a sustainable industry. So, like everything in history, I mean, there's a combination of luck, the time was ripe, the circumstances were there, and I found an interlocutor who shared the same vision as myself. So it was easy for us to work together towards this common goal. He's, in fact, the bigger producer. He's the number one producer. Cote d'Ivoire is the number one producer. We are the second. But between us, we come to this figure of 65%. So it has been a development that has been, I believe, very, very positive for our two countries. And I think that it means that we're capable of duplicating this kind of thinking on a broad range of things that we need to do on the continent. But this is the origin of the policy, and this is where we're going, and we're hoping that it is going to, with the support, as I say, that the ADB is giving us, be able to give us a really strong future position as the industry grows.